Okay, Zorgamazoo, chapter 12 and 13. But remember yesterday, or the last time I read, they found out that those big bug things were not really animals, they were machines, and they were taken to some planet, not Earth anymore, where they are all, let's see, there's, whoa. There's a picture of all those bug things taking them into that cavern, like a cave, remember? Okay. And then there's that little one right there, that guy. Okay. The story of Dolbert Hohummer III is not like the rest of the story you heard. Dolbert had come from a faraway place. In fact, he belonged to an alien race. He came from a place called Greybalon 4, a planet well known as a bit of a bore. It was smaller in size than even the Earth. It had nothing of Jupiter's generous girth, and nothing like Saturn's magnificent rings. It had none of those wondrously singular things. This was a planet where day after day the weather was always the rainiest gray, and not only the sky but the sea and the land, everything gray and stupendously bland. Why, even the people were grayer than gray, as if all their color had faded away. They had built up their planet with cities and lanes, traveled by Graylian trolleys and trains. From Graylian houses to Graylian shops, while traffic was guided by Graylian cops. Most of them toiled at monotonous jobs, manufacturing gadgets and thingamabobs. In the evening they drove along Graylian roads to the uniform gray of their boring abodes, and then climbing into their Graylian beds, with Graylian reveries filling their heads, the Graylian people would finish the day with dreams that, of course, were entirely gray. Thinking of counting the granules of sand on a beach, or imagine a lengthy political speech, just think of the utmost deplorable bore. That's 10 times as thrilling as Greybalon 4. But why, you may ask, was it lacking in spice? Like, wouldn't a little excitement be nice? As with much of this story, the answer is found by digging a bit, looking under the ground. Because under the surface of Greybalon 4, there was little to look at, even less to explore. It wasn't like Earth, full of boulders and stones and minerals, metals, and dinosaur bones. Inside of this planet was hollow and bare, like a ball that was filled with unusual air. But the air wasn't air, it was more of a mist. It quietly wafted and billowed and hissed. It would sluggishly swirl, it would languidly teem, and the name of this vapor was tedium steam. It was dreary and almost invisibly pale. It rolled and it flowed at the pace of a snail. It curdled and churned in swishes and swarms. It was boredom, you see, in its purest of forms. Now, before you begin to protest or object, believe me, good reader, my facts have been checked. It may strike you as weird, and I know how you feel, but tedium steam, I assure you, is real. It's also on Earth. Yes, we've got it too. No ifs, ands, or buts. What I'm saying is true. It's produced as a residue deep in the brain in people whose lives are indelibly plain. You'll find it near braggarts and prattlers and snobs, or people with overpaid clerical jobs. It clouds around people with limited views and salesmen with products that no one can use. It builds up in such people till over the years there's so much of the stuff it leaks out their ears. And not only from people, but from places as well. There's a great many places the vapor can dwell. All around the TV, it's especially thick, which is why a TV can make some people sick. It can also be found in the emptiest nooks of bookshelves that no longer have any books. While this tedium steam, for whatever it's worth, is not really noticed down here on the Earth, up on Gray Ballon 4, the stuff is like gold. It was mined from the ground. It was traded and sold. In fact, it was used as an energy source to power their trains and their buses, of course. All that tedium steam through the night and the day kept everything moving in every which way. There were steam-powered toasters and steam-powered drills. There were steam-powered factories, steam-powered mills. There were steam-powered houses and steam-powered cars and steam-powered everything under the stars. And so over time it would certainly seem that Gray Ballon 4 would run out of steam. The politicians, you see, had stiffly decreed, "There's a ton of the stuff, even more than we need. There's more," they declared, "than at first it appears. There's enough to last upward of 1 billion years." So all of the people on Gray Ballon 4 built factories, houses, and buses galore, because everyone thought without even a doubt that their tedium steam would never run out. Politicians, however, are commonly wrong, and the tedium steam didn't last very long. Where once the whole planet had more than enough, there soon was a worrying lack of the stuff. So the Graylians gathered on Parliament Hill. Some were shaking their fists, some were solemn and still. "Prime Minister, sir," the Graylians cried, "you said we had tons, but we haven't. You lied." Unmoved, the Prime Minister uttered a snort. In his mind, he was planning a pithy retort. But before he could speak, he was rather amazed to hear someone's voice being suddenly raised. "Wait," said the voice. "Please, hold on a sec. Our situation is grim. It's a bit of a wreck, but here's what I'm thinking. If we've got the guts, then I've an idea. It might save our butts." The Prime Minister startled, looking over the crowd. He adjusted his glasses and shouted aloud, "Who said that? Who are you? Which one of you spoke? I certainly hope you weren't making a joke." You see, telling a joke or pulling a prank on Graylien 4 was like robbing a bank. If you said to a stranger, "Knock, knock," or "Who's there?" you'd be dragged off to jail by the roots of your hair. "Oh, no," said the voice, sounding suddenly small. "It wasn't a joke. No, not at all. I was telling the truth. I've thought of a way to keep everything working and perfectly gray." The Prime Minister paused. He squinted. He stared. He was old after all, and his sight was impaired. "Well, whoever you are, before making your claim, you first must come out. You must tell us your name." The crowd moved aside. It was parted in two. The stranger came forward. He pushed himself through. He stood on his toes to better be heard. "I'm Dolbert," he said, "Ho-Hummer the Third." Don, don, don. Chapter 13. An insidious plan. Look at the picture. Dolbert. "Hello," the Prime Minister said. "So what's this idea that you've got in your head?" "Well now," said Dolbert, "here's what I thought. Maybe tedium steam can be borrowed or bought. We could trade with some place where the people are bored. Then our energy needs might all be restored." The Prime Minister nodded. He was stroking his chin. His lips wrinkled up in a sinister grin. "Dolbert," he said with a gleam in his eye, "I think we might give your proposal a try. The idea, I can see, has a certain appeal. We could borrow or beg or maybe just steal." The Prime Minister smiled. "Now, here is my scheme. We will first find a planet with tedium steam. We will send someone there with equipment and gear to steal it. You see, we have nothing to fear." So telescopes fitted with lenses of glass were built to seek out this intangible gas. They incessantly gazed at the gray of the skies with the glint of their massive monocular eyes. They scanned every comet and planet and sun, every orb in the sky, every single last one, every nebula, galaxy, near and far, every planet and moon, every wandering star, every current of ether and heavenly gust, and every last speckle of meteor dust. For years all the Graylians peered at the sky in search of a surrogate power supply, and after so long they were set to collapse They were ready to quit, to throw in their caps. They were fully convinced that their planet was doomed. We're done for, they thought, or so they assumed. It was Dolbert at last who found a surprise, a greeny blue planet of limited size. What he found in this place, it would certainly seem, was the tiniest whisper of tedium steam. Callooh and Calais, the Prime Minister said, giving Dolbert a pat on the top of his head. Let's have a look closer. How much have they got? Because, Dolbert, he muttered, we need quite a lot. But the problem was this. There wasn't enough. There was barely a trace, just a puff of the stuff. You see, these were the days and the evenings of yore when the earth was exciting and less of a bore. Back then it was brimming with creatures and things, like dragons and ogres and griffins with wings. Our planet back then was a wondrous affair, and boredom itself was exceedingly rare. The Prime Minister frowned. He threw up his hands. Curses, he cried. They're foiling our plans. Just look at it, Dolbert. Of course that's the case. It's lively, exciting. Bleh, what a place. The Prime Minister paused. Wait a moment, he said. What if this place were a little more dead? If the planet were drabber, I think we would find that the people as well would be rather inclined to get splendidly sick with the drearies and dulls, so the tedium steam would come out of their skulls. But how can we keep them all jaded and bored, so our energy needs can be fully restored? Well now, said Dolbert, between you and me, it's all of those creatures. They're the problem, you see. They live in the rivers, the woodlands and peaks. These astonishing beasties and lovable freaks. So whenever those humans go out for a stroll, they encounter a yeti, a gorgon, a troll, which makes them all bubbly with wonder and awe, and enchanted, you see, from whatever they saw. This enchantment, it lingers, bit like a dream, and it blocks their production of tedium steam. So what if those creatures were taken away? This earth would be duller. Now what do you say? The Prime Minister blinked. He nodded his head. Dolbert, you're brilliant, he finally said. We'll start off with all the most fanciful ones. This planet, regretfully, has them in tons. Creatures with features so eerily weird, it would surely be best if they all disappeared. Once they're all gone, our plan will succeed. We'll have tedium steam. We'll have all that we need. Once this planet is colorless, boring, bereft, once there aren't any creatures or animals left, we'll kidnap them all. We'll pilfer and steal till humans forget that they even were real. So together the Graylian people began to contrive and devise an insidious plan. Kidnapping robots were hastily made to pirate and pilfer, to pillage and raid. And these robots, these monsters, these Octomobots were not only the start of the sinister plots. They were only the start of the sinister plots. The following phase of the devious scheme was something to gather up tedium steam. They called it a hoarder of boredom machine. It would search any place with a weary routine. It would seek out the steam, and no matter where, it would siphon the boredom right out of the air. It would vacuum it up from the earth to the moon, inflating its core like a massive balloon. The contraptions were packaged and carefully stored. They were taken to rockets and loaded aboard. Then came the time for selecting the one who would finish the job that now had begun, a Graylian hero to lead the attack, who would travel to Earth and might never come back. So the Graylian people were put to a vote. Each one of them wrote on a balloting note, and the one they selected, the one they preferred, was none other than Dolbert Hohummer III. Upon hearing the news of the Graylian choice, Dolbert wasn't upset, though he didn't rejoice. He merely stood calmly, somber and still. I'll do it, he said. Yes, I imagine I will. He climbed into one of those octomobots, and although he was nauseous, his stomach in knots, he said not a word, just uttered a sigh as he watched all the Graylians waving goodbye. Then the countdown began. It went backward from 10. The rockets ignited, they rumbled, and then blew cindering billows all over the place as Dolbert Ho Hummer was launched into space. Dun, dun.